Good evening and welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today with Oscar. Oscar is the guitarist from HAMMERFALL. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. I've been enjoying your playing for a very long time. You have a very specific playing, a sound that I know when I hear it. And that's one of my
Yeah,
favorite songs. My favorite pieces of a guitar player. You can hear the guitar playing. You're like, I know who that is. You know.
that's the highest praise you can get as a guitar player. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, I listen to a lot. Obviously, I'm a guitar fan. I'm a guitar player. And I listen to a lot of guitar, a lot of music, and you have your own sound and in your songwriting it shows and you're very prolific actually. It's pretty amazing. You From the very beginning you've been pretty consistent with the albums. um
Yeah, we tried. I mean, we set out to do this. This was a passion project from the beginning, right? I mean, we didn't think there was. I never thought I was going to sit here 25, 20, it's almost well 30 years
yeah,
later,
30
actually.
years.
Now,
Yeah, yeah. Happy
you know.
anniversary.
Thank you. So that was never the intention. Because you just couldn't. I couldn't dream that big back in
No.
'93. It was such a different climate for this type of music. But what we did have, and what I said is it's a passion project, meant that what I mean by that is so we played the music that we absolutely loved,
Mhm.
that we grew up with, that we were really really passionate about, and nobody else was playing. So we figured, fuck it, we'll play it ourselves. That's basically what the mindset was. Uh, and because we had that mindset, I think all the albums came quite naturally because the evolution of Hammerfall was very natural because we got to do
Mhm.
this full time. We got to have all our ideas, just whatever it is, put it in. But we also had a vision. Joachim and I, specifically together, had a really clear vision of what Hammerfall is supposed to be, and we stuck to that through the years.
Well, it's amazing how well, I mean, because you're right. I think if you had a plan it probably wouldn't have worked because the best laid plans, especially for music,
Yeah,
go out the window.
yes, yeah,
But it's
always.
just, I mean, so honestly, you guys just played from your heart and you had no agenda. So everything's just been a journey of success, really, because you've had no agenda.
Yeah, I think that plays a big part in it. Just the fact that we didn't pick this music style because we thought that was what the next big thing was going to
Right.
be, or that it's going to take us anywhere. We just played the music we loved and then rode the roller coaster that started everything.
Well, I think you've been a leader on some level in that because I think what you guys did is because at the time metal has always waned and flowed in different spots of the world too.
Yeah,
You
that's
know, in
true. Yeah,
Europe's been better for after the 80s and 90s and 2000s, kind of when grunge hit America pretty bad, which was nothing wrong
mm,
with grunge, but I'm talking like commercial also. Like if you were a metal band, you lost your
yeah,
contracts, is what I'm saying. Europe kind of
yeah.
saved
There was a
metal a
lot
little
of that.
bit, you know what I mean? So it was nice to see bands spring out again and start fresh again
Yeah,
and carry over some of that influence.
yeah, that was the whole thing. Like what you just said, that's the reason we didn't think that this band was really like
Yeah.
this was never going to be anything because we did it for our own sake more than anything else because we never thought that this music would come back. Maybe not ever come back, but at least not at the moment when it did. And
Mhm.
what we didn't count on, what from our point of view was we are in Sweden. That's where that's all and I mean this is of course back in '96, 90
Yeah.
well mid '90s. The world was a lot smaller back then because the internet wasn't as established as it is now, and there was no Spotify and all that stuff. So it was very hard. Like, you didn't really understand. The only like clue to what was going on in the US, for example, was Metal Hammer or Metal Edge or whatever
Mhm.
the metal magazines was. That was basically what we saw in the music stores. I mean, sorry, the magazine stores, and that was all Corn and Machine Head and grunge bands, whatever
Yeah.
the
Right.
fad was. So for us, there was, and the kind of landscape here was the same, similar at least. Nobody really wanted to admit that they still liked the melodic stuff because it was supposed to be very rhythm based and very
Right.
aggressive in the '90s. And but what we didn't count on, what I'm getting at, is Germany, basically, because in Germany they didn't pivot away from anything. Of course, they did that too. They had the modern new metal, whatever they were called back as well, but they never let go of the old bands, basically. Not in the same way, at least. Yeah, so there
No,
was
Germany's
still
very interesting like that. Yeah.
yeah. It's very strange. I mean, it's like they're living in their bubble still. They like what they like, and that's it. And I love that. They have no
Yeah.
qualms about. Like, for example, in in the 90s, people were laughing at us when they saw us on stage wearing, leather and studs and chains. That was because that's how we perceive the heavy metal band is supposed to look
Right.
like, right? So we wore that. But I saw people like sniggering and what the hell, what are they
Yeah.
doing? Don't they know this 95 or 90, whatever it was now? But the Germans never said anything like that. They just went, "Come here, baby," and embraced us. So we had a really good, and plus we had a German record label that helped a lot too, because they knew the market in Germany, and that's how it
Yeah.
started for us, and then it grew outwards for that, and then of course. With the third album, Renegade, we hit it really big, basically everywhere. So
Yeah. It brings two questions. I'm actually two things. The first thing is it's funny because actually even like the Hooters did really big in Germany and still do. So it's interesting different types of music. I love the Hooters. I love melody based music. So
mm-hmm.
I can like the Hooters and I can like Hammerfall because there's a good melody. So I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, sure.
So but it's really so this was interesting. Germany's always embraced a lot of different sounds. One of the questions I was going to ask you though. So when you were starting out and early metal, one of the things we had over here was like tape trading. And obviously, by the
Right.
time you guys started out, there was no more tape trading because there are no more tapes anymore. Now they come back as like little niche things, as like promo kits.
Uh-huh.
So I mean,
Yeah.
the MP3s. What were you guys doing? Because they didn't have tape trading back then. How were you getting some of the different underground
Well,
music?
it was still cassette tapes. That was
Was it
the
so?
thing, in early 90s for sure. I didn't get my first CD player until like 94 or something. I was,
Okay.
I didn't want to give up the vinyl. But also remember, I did come from like I was a teenager in the end of the 90s, like a late teenager. So I
Yeah.
was involved in this
Which
whole
I was too.
death metal scene, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Gothenburg sound involvement and all that stuff. I was heavily involved in that. So there was a lot of tape trading going on back then as well. But with Hammerfall, there was not really any trading. We didn't really record a demo either. So the only like the band was formed in '93, but nothing really happened except for a live show here and there
Mhm.
until '96 when Joachim came into the picture. And the first show we did with Joachim was recorded by accident uh, by a friend of Frederick, our bass player. His friend was also playing in the same night. So his girlfriend filmed his friend's shot set, but then they had like 15 minutes left or whatever it was, 10 minutes left on the tape because videotapes with VHS big things.
Yep.
So oh fuck it, I'll film Frederick's show too. And then I think they had 1.5 songs, and then after that the tape just shut off. uh, but that was the basis for our record deal. So that's how we got it,
Really?
because we had that tape. Yeah. Uh, Also part of the story is because I was playing with Frederick in a technical death metal band called Crystal Age at that time, and we had released an album on a Dutch label called Vic Records, kind of like
Mhm.
a wardrobe label we call them here, because they were very popular. They didn't really. It was they released the music that they wanted to release and put out the 1,000, 2,000 CDs, whatever it was. So we had already contact with Vic Records, and he said to me that because I told him I have a heavy metal band as well, and he said, "Yeah, that would send me something. Let's listen to it." So I sent him that video, and because he knew us, like he knew me and Frederick, and uh, he knew that we weren't trying to sell him on something that wasn't
Right.
legit, right?
Honest.
Yeah, exactly. So he signed us Hammerfall for that deal, and then recorded the first album for this record label. But we had also had Jesper in the band, Jesper Strömblad, who was in Flames at that time, and In Flames was on Nuclear Blast. Jesper brought a tape from Hammerfall. Like when we finished the recording, I think In Flames went on tour. This was right before Christmas in '96, so they went on some sort of like Christmas bash tour together with many other bands in Germany, Europe at least. And so Jesper gave a tape to somebody at Nuclear Blast, and that's how they got a hold of us from the first. So we got a fax, again, again with the old technology, but that was how people communicated back then, because this was way before email and stuff. So we got sent a fax um, from Marcus Steiger, from the boss of Nuclear Blast, or the owner of the record company, and he was excited, ecstatic. He really wanted to sign Hammerfall, so that's how it started for us. And then the first album was released on Nuclear Blast, but licensed from Vic Records.
Okay.
But once, yeah, and then Nuclear Blast realized, oh yeah, this is we're gonna let go, like buy him out. So we ended up buying him out. You know how it works with labels.
Hmm.
It was the label who gave him the money, but it was in the end it was our money. So basically, we ourselves bought ourselves out. But that's how it works. You know, it was recoupable stuff. But so we got only was from like the second pressing on the first album was I think was Hammerfall was a Nuclear Blast product
A
basically.
collector's item, right? Well, I
Yeah, I
mean,
guess so.
what's interesting to me is because growing up, like so about the same age, I literally things changed for you guys when you guys got signed and the music was passing about, and even like even how I was hearing music generationally. Because at this point, when you're younger teens and you're teens or whatever, you're most aggressive listening to music for most people. I think I'm pretty fair
Mm,
saying
yeah.
that. It's
Yes,
your
that's
formative
absolutely,
years. Everyone goes back to
absolutely.
that's their memories. I mean, they connect everything to it. Once you're like 30 years old and you have a kid, you're not thinking about that. Does not bring you back to your first kid's first birthday or something. So
No,
but being a music fan, like I am, I've always continually seeked out music as much as I did when I got older. Now I remember hearing about Hammerfall, but not in the same way. As the world changed, and you had like Napster and other online places like
yeah,
that, and then and websites were going up and down, and like .com this and everything was like realigning, and you guys were coming up during that digital confusion almost in a way for music because music did not well, it still really hasn't found its legs again. I mean, I don't think it ever will.
right.
But you guys, that was a really weird time though, because I mean, to even come across you, I was surprised I did because it was so weird for music at that time. So it's another plus that you guys succeeded because, you know,
Yeah, I mean, it was the leap across the pond was fairly large in those days, like musically,
yeah.
like we talked about earlier. But what happened for us was, we yeah, this was after the first album. Like we had recorded the second, but it wasn't released yet. So we went on a summer like promotion tour. The album was
Hmm.
coming out in September, so this was maybe early August, I think. And there was back in those days there was a show like a fair kind of music, not for for music instruments, but for like record labels and stuff. It was called Popcom in Germany, in Cologne. And it just so happened that Chuck Schuldiner from Death was there as well.
Oh,
And he's loved Hammerfall. So and he was doing a tour with Death. I think they released that Sounds of Perseverance the same year, like same
okay.
around the same time, I think. So that came out in '98, and we did a tour with them in. It was a fairly long one, I think, maybe 5 weeks or so in the U.S. Um, right, I think we came back like before Christmas, like in December 20 or whatever it was. So that started us on the US. That was my first time in the US ever. I've
How
never
was
been
that
there
tour?
before.
Like the fan wise, because I mean,
Uh,
you guys are a lot more
yeah,
melodic than Death. I mean, very
yeah,
technical music, very technical. But when you listen to the
but
melodies and the aggression,
yeah,
it's a little bit different. And I mean little, I mean a lot.
yeah. You know, you're 100% right. The connection with Death. Chuck was he's always loved heavy metal, of course, because he came from that background as
Oh
well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he
yeah,
he
yeah.
wasn't he. I don't remember how old he was, but he was kind of like my age, maybe a couple of years older. But we still basically the same background as we had. So and also that this was also at a time when they were planning on releasing that, or maybe they already did. I don't remember that. Oh, the fuck, what was the name of that? He did like a heavy metal project as well.
I don't remember his now. I know he's doing a lot
Yeah,
of stuff. I mean, there's so much, and then there's so much stuff out now from Death that's been re-released.
yeah.
Every live
But
album.
this was released when he was still alive. So
Yeah.
this was some well, whatever. He was sort of pivoting a little bit towards maybe aggressive heavy metal, if you want to call
Mhm.
it that. I don't think he was singing on that album. Anyway, so he was involved in that. He was like very interested in this package, and he worked for the most part, not everywhere, but for the most part, it did work. It was I remember one place and time in San Francisco. We played with I don't remember the name of the bands, but there were a couple more bands on the bill on that show,
Mhm.
and we got things thrown on at us on stage but from the other bands. It came from like the dressing room was like just boarded up. It was like there was nothing like glass bottles or
Oh
anything like that,
no, I
but
know,
still,
but
you
yeah,
know,
I know.
stuff. Yeah.
That's pretty.
So
That's not cool.
but who cares? You know, it was we didn't
No,
let
but you're
that stop us.
musicians, your fellow musicians, at least give respect to somebody putting their
Yeah.
time and their craft
You
out there. It's not
yes,
easy.
you'd think that that was going to be the attitude, but anyway. So for the most part, and as far as I can remember, uh, the audience loved it. You know that
Mhm.
they may not have understood everything because the younger crowd maybe wasn't around in the 80s, but they still liked it. I mean, we there was never any booze or any, or you know, we felt welcomed on stage every night. So it's a really good tour. And on a personal level, that was it still ranks to this day after all the touring we've done since then.
Really?
It's the one of my absolute favorite tours. Yes.
It's because you're maybe like the breakthrough success. Well, what's great about this band is, and with you guys is, like, it's never a band I feel sad listening to it because everything feels like you get happy with the song, even if you don't know it, because the melody lifts you and you're happy with the song.
No.
You're catching on to it, you're understanding it. I mean, second time, you kind of got the songs, you feel good. Everything's just epic. Everything I listen to, I feel epic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything around the house,
Yeah.
I even feel like it's epic because it's just the music's behind me.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean, and I think that's the inherent attitude of heavy metal music, just the
Yes,
positivism. It's not
power.
happy,
Yeah,
it's positive and
yeah.
it's powerful. So it gives you energy. And that's so what I get from my heroes, like Judas Priest and Accept, are two of my favorite bands since since I was a
Yeah,
kid.
and they're still
Still
really
to this
good.
day are.
Still to this day,
Yeah,
rocking.
exactly. Exactly. So but you get that energy from listening to it as a fan. That's the
Absolutely.
energy I want to have our fans feel when they hear Hammerfall music. That's always been something we try to sort of channel through the music.
Has it been a challenge because your playing is always out of the gate. The early albums, it's always been really, really good. You had a really good tone, and obviously, as a songwriter, you want to grow as a songwriter. But you want to keep to the sound of the band. You don't want to. You want to be creative without making too many left turns. Has it been a challenge for
Right.
you to
Yeah.
kind of grow within um, your own
Yeah,
band?
absolutely. Yeah, we set the boundaries and we don't really want to exceed those boundaries, which, but that makes sense also because I think what I will always said in interviews since we started doing interviews basically is that for me, heavy metal is such a broad concept.
Mm-hmm.
You can have, your Manowars or Judas Priest or King Diamond even is like those are very different bands,
Yeah.
but they're still a part of the heavy metal. So you can do a lot of stuff
Oh
within
yeah.
with the boundaries of heavy metal. So we've never really thought about anything like the thing we can't do is the thing we don't want to do. So like, it's very easy, it doesn't it makes so much sense for us because we want to do this stuff, we don't want to do that, and that would not have been within the boundaries, but we don't want to do it anyway. So it's really simple that way.
Well, one of the things I know get to the end here, what I want to say is that COVID was like really crazy for a lot of music fans. Like for bands, it was like obviously it was bad for on the medical and everything side for
Yeah,
people. But for artists that were touring musicians or playing musicians, a lot of bands got to sit down and write the first album they had time to write, rest from it, and so there's a lot of really good albums came out. What's interesting is as I look at your discography, you guys really didn't slow down. You guys still did some of your best albums ever, one after the other. And between that, you guys were doing like anniversary releases. Like you guys actually were
yeah.
growing during the time of COVID
Yeah, we
musically.
were
That
very fortunate in that way that we like a lot of bands got to cancel tours and in the middle of them, or maybe even before they started. We got to finish. We did a full US or North American tour as a support for Sabaton in 19, and then
nice.
in January and February in 20, we did a full headline tour in Europe, which was our biggest and most successful tour that we've ever done. So for us, and the thing was, we finished that tour, went home, boom, 2 weeks later, everything shut down. So in that respect, we were really fortunate because we got to finish what we had planned. There
Right.
are a few shows, festivals all out the window, few shows, and then we had a North American tour planned for the fall of 2020, which also got had to be canceled. But apart from that, I mean, we did most of the stuff we were supposed to do, and we also had a plan before, long before COVID hit. We had talked because Joachim really likes long-term planning that makes him feel secure and calm. So uh, and I think it's great. I mean, I would never insist on it. I love it, but I'm
Right.
not that guy who was just has to have it. You know, for me, it's I'm much more lazy than that. He likes to have everything squared up. So we had the plan um, to record the next album around the time when we did record the next Hammer of Dawn. In that case, we had the plan to release a live album or a live release during 2020, which we did also. So we recorded it during the European tour and then released it like 6 months later or whatever it was. And all those like the re-releases of the old albums were also planned from before. So we just kept our schedule basically, except the schedule was without live shows. Yeah, that's
Right.
the big difference. So we
It,
didn't really. Yeah, sorry.
no, well, it's amazing. I mean, has all these releases actually continued to grow the band, or is it? I mean, is there a certain point where it's going to be like a saturation? Because I was
Uh,
also looking, I'm like, there's a lot of albums on the market right now this year, and a lot of
yeah,
tours, and a lot of bands you can't get, and buses you can't get right now because everybody's out
yeah,
there, or
exactly.
records. I mean,
True.
so there's because everyone is out of the gate this past year or two when COVID opened up things
Yeah,
again.
it's been
Did it
insane.
kind of change things? Yeah, has it been more of a challenge now with records and stuff for you guys?
No, I think what COVID did to me personally was first, like it hit in March basically, and then by summer I realized, okay, this is not going away soon. You know, it's going to
Yeah.
be for a while. And then that summer, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was pretty worn out from we toured a lot the like previous 5 years or whatever.
Hmm.
It's been a lot of traveling, a lot of stuff. I was kind of tired of it, but I didn't understand that or realize it until I didn't have to go anywhere anymore. So that summer was, mwah, that summer was perfect. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember the last time I spent this an uninterrupted summer with my family in Sweden. I don't think this ever happened basically. So that summer was great. But then when summer started to fade and fall was, approaching, and
Yeah.
it looked for a while that COVID was going to go away for a second. Like it's
Yeah. It did. It did. Yeah,
okay,
it
the
did.
first wave is
Yeah.
done, yeah, and then the second wave hit even bigger and harder than the first one.
Mhm.
And now we're in like October, and that was hard because we did have an album we were supposed to start recording. I think was it January, maybe I don't remember exactly when we started. But it was really difficult to be inspirational in those times. So that was the downside of it,
Right.
to find inspiration because I didn't have anything to look forward to musically, like professionally, so to speak.
That'd be hard
So
there because isn't also sorry, I mixed up on you. It's also Sweden, but the weather changes too. So your seasons are a
yeah,
lot drastic too. So dealing with
yeah,
these
that's true.
drastic season changes is just enough. It's just enough
Yeah,
to get
it
through
was.
and keep
Yeah,
upbeat. And then again, COVID on top of
yeah,
that is like being kicked in the
yeah,
stomach when you're already down.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly, but it worked out. For
Right.
me, what saved that for me was that I wrote a lot of songs before. I didn't have to write all the songs in 2020. I had several songs left over
Mhm.
from previous, and I also, for more than anything, wrote stuff on the road. I've started doing that the last 5 years or whatever, and that kind of saved me because I had most of the album already written, and I had to finish a couple of songs. So it didn't matter that those songs took 3 times longer to
Yeah.
finish than they normally did. It didn't matter
No rush.
because I already, no rush. So, and that was the great thing again. We record here in our own studio, which is on my property here in Sweden, which meant we didn't have any time constraints. We could record whenever we wanted to. We could take a weekend off if because Pontus has to come down from Stockholm. So
Okay.
yeah, the drums, of course, done in a week, gone. That's the first thing that happens. But then the guitars, we do song by song. So we do guitars and bass on one song, and then we move on to the next one. And uh, Pontus has to come down and be a part of this. The other guitar player, Pontus, and he's sort of the studio mastermind. He needs to be in the studio when we record. We can't do it without him. So we this was the most. I think I was saying this was the most leisurely recording we ever done,
Good.
partly because of COVID, because we had time. We were started really early, several
Hmm.
months before we sort of had to start, because we didn't have anything other
To
to do,
do.
and we were ready. But also because the we did there was not anything else pushing in on you. Like you have to think about this for release and whatever. You have to travel here to do promotion. Nothing like that. We just recorded the album and was done with it. And then when we were done, we sat on it for a while because of the delivery time for pressing for vinyls, mostly more than anything. That they had almost doubled. So
Yeah,
normally the labels need the album 3 months in advance. That's what they tell you, and then they because they want to have a margin of error, kind of if you know if you go over the whatever. But 3 months is like the cutoff time usually, and now it's probably 5 months or 6 months even nowadays. So because the vinyl pressing plants couldn't keep up with all
yeah.
the orders. Basically, I think it was a
It's bigger,
shortage
right?
of yeah, it was a shortage of supplies like to manufacture the albums. I think it was not
Yeah.
just the fact that they had many albums; they had didn't have the material to do it either.
No, you're right. And also now with CDs, records, I think outsold CDs this year. I think that's what
Yeah,
it is. Like
that's
by
true.
a couple
That's
percent. I've been vinyl all my whole life. I've got
yeah,
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of records.
yeah.
The upside for me was when no one liked it, I was getting all the good ones I didn't have, real cheap.
Right, yeah,
Now they're ridiculous again. I'm like, oh,
yeah. Now it's really expensive. Even the
oh,
smallest, you know, whatever
yeah,
the least popular album still is expensive nowadays.
it
So
is. It is. That's awesome. So I just want to wrap up. So you're getting ready to go back on tour again. You just did a successful one with Halloween. So like, what's the plans now? Touring and then the
yeah,
album cycle again, or
summer
what we have?
festivals. Yeah, for summer festivals, that's what we're doing. This weekend is off, and we've been home for a week, and now it's going to be 2 weeks before between shows, more or less. Then we do the festival season starts for us. So we do those European outdoor festivals, a lot
Mhm.
of them this summer, and then we actually do have 4 shows with Halloween left over from the European tour because they had to split the European tour up
Yeah.
in 10 different sessions or whatever it is. So we do have Scandinavia and Spain left to do in September. And those are the last things we do. After that, we're going to take a break and record the new album. So
Nice.
that's what we're going to do. Yep.
What a great package. You guys, the two similar bands too. So it's really what
Yep.
a great package. Real good guitars and heavy metal, but some great vocals. I mean, it's just
Yeah. It's been real
that
good
is
for us.
yeah, that's a dream package.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, man. This has been great to
Yeah.
talk to you. I've been a fan for
No
years.
problem at
I'm
all.
glad we could finally do this. So
Yeah.
people,
I'm
check them
happy.
out.
Happy to.
Check, yeah, go to the website. Go to see my tour if you can. Obviously, it's gonna be in Europe right now at this point, but you can always go to the website. It's a great website. Lots of videos, albums, live stuff. You got a lot of stuff out, a lot of reissues. So
True.
there's
Yeah.
enough for people to listen to right now.
We're gonna be back, yeah, in North America next year. We haven't like we wanna be back in North America next year, and if we want something, it usually happens. So let's
I'll be
hope for that.
I'll be there in the front row. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool.